coffee was still warm. The front door was unlocked. And upstairs, a 7-year-old girl was still asleep in her bed. But her mother was gone. On the morning of October 14th, 2003, Eleanor Voss walked out of her home in Harlow Creek, Nebraska, and vanished without a trace. No note, no goodbye. She didn't even take her purse. The town called it a tragedy. Her husband called it a breakdown. But the truth was something far darker. Eleanor Voss was 34 years old, a second-grade teacher, a mother, a woman her neighbors described as warm, quiet, and always smiling. But people who knew her closely told a different story. Her sister Diane noticed it first, the long sleeves in summer, the flinching at loud sounds, the way Eleanor would go silent the moment her husband entered the room. Eleanor had tried to leave once before, in the summer of 2002. She packed a bag and drove to Diane's house, 40 miles away. She stayed for 3 days. Then her husband Thomas came to the door. Diane never found out what he said to Eleanor in that driveway, but Eleanor left with him, and she never came back. On the morning of October 14th, Thomas Voss called 911 at 7:42 a.m. His voice was calm, almost too calm. He told the dispatcher his wife was gone, that she had been unstable lately, that she had talked about needing to get away. In that one phone call, he had already written the story. When officers arrived, the house was spotless, no signs of struggle. Eleanor's wallet, her phone, her keys, all still inside. She had taken absolutely nothing. The lead detective closed the case in 48 hours. Voluntary missing person, a woman who walked away from her life. Diane went to the police. She told them about the bruises, the fear. The afternoon Thomas came to collect his wife from her driveway. They listened, then they filed the paperwork and moved on. 17 years passed. Then, in March of 2020, Diane received a letter in the mail. No return address, postmarked from Flagstaff, Arizona. Inside, a name, an address, and 4 words handwritten on a single sheet of paper. She didn't leave willingly. Diane brought it to the Nebraska cold case unit. The investigator who opened Eleanor's file felt something was immediately wrong. The entire case had been built on one man's version of events. No one had ever seriously investigated Thomas Voss. They started digging, and what they found changed everything. 3 weeks before Eleanor disappeared, Thomas had taken out a $200,000 life insurance policy on his wife. He had never filed a claim. The letter led investigators to a storage unit in Flagstaff, abandoned, unpaid, cleaned out by a housekeeper in 2019. Inside the boxes, she found photo albums, children's drawings, a woman's winter coat, and at the bottom, wrapped in a plastic bag, a journal. It belonged to Eleanor Voss. The final entry was dated October 12th, 2003, the night before she disappeared. Investigators never released the full contents, but they confirmed it contained detailed accounts of abuse, specific threats made against Eleanor's life, and a woman who knew something terrible was coming. She had written it all down. She had left a record, because maybe, somewhere in her heart, she hoped someone would eventually find it. Thomas Voss was arrested on April 3, 2021, charged with first-degree murder. The evidence was damning. The journal, the insurance policy, and a soil sample collected in 2003 and forgotten in an evidence locker for 17 years. When forensic teams retested it using modern DNA analysis, they found traces of Eleanor beneath the backyard shed. The earth had remembered what Thomas tried to make it forget. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. On October 19, 2022, 19 years after Eleanor vanished, Thomas Voss was found guilty. Life in prison. No possibility of parole. Eleanor's daughter Mara, now in her late 20s, stood in that courtroom and spoke. She said she had always known her mother didn't leave on purpose. She would never have left me. I knew that. I always knew that. There is still no confirmed burial site for Eleanor Voss. That search continues. But near the elementary school where she used to teach, her former students placed a small bench in her memory.
On the plaque, 5 words. She was here. She mattered. The most dangerous lies are the ones told quietly, by a man with a calm voice and a story already prepared. But the truth has a way of surviving, even when it's buried.